we've met so many young people that are just not ready for the workplace, right? And we're not talking about, like we've said, we're not talking about the degrees. We're talking about the skills, the attributes that are actually needed and required.
The fact that people's jobs are becoming vulnerable to automation, and people are worried as to whether they're going to lose their job, whether their job will remain. So that's what has been with us even before COVID-19.
What I mean by that is everything that we did physical, we put it into the virtual space and try to simulate it as best as possible to give it the same sort of excitement and the sort of zeal, etc., that you get in a formal or physical setup.
Have you even done an assessment of your workers that are working from home to see that working from home is practical for them? And then you need to look at the resources that you should be providing. They should not be out of pocket.
We have heard all of the buzzwords around this period. New normal, working from home, digitization, and then the rest. To be able to successfully adapt to the new normal, we must reimagine our organization across everything that we do, especially three key facets of business. How must we reinvent our activities to revolve around the future of work? How must our core activities evolve in the future of work? How does the future of work influence our talent strategy? Where does work get done in the future of work? These are issues we would look at. The theme for this webinar is the future of work, transforming our workforce, and our workplace. But I'm not the one going to dive into the details. Fortunately, we have subject matter experts that have joined us on this webinar, and they are going to do justice to the issues and to the theme. So let me quickly introduce the speakers for today before we move on. The first person to be introduced is Maraj Pam. Maraj Pam is the Human Capital Leader for Deloitte Africa. And Maraj Pam, if your camera is on, you could kindly wave so that they know that is you. Welcome, Maraj Pam. We also have Joseph Olofinshola. Joseph is the Human Capital Leader for Deloitte West Africa. And then we also have Ama Benan-Ponsa. Ama Benan-Ponsa is the Head of Human Resource at MTN Ghana.
Hello, everyone. Looking forward to the program. Really excited about this.
Great. Welcome, Ama. And then we also have Irene Asari. Irene is the former HR manager for Talo. Hello, Irene.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Great to be here. Looking forward to a great conversation.
And then we have Anita Wiafi Esino, the CEO of OML Africa, and who is also an HR specialist.
Hi everybody.
Okay, so to officially welcome everybody and kick it off, let me invite the country managing partner of Deloitte Ghana, a man I greatly admire, a man I call my chairman, Mr. Daniel Owusu, to give the official welcome speech. Then we can open the session. Dan.
Okay, thank you very much, Abe, and good morning to all our panel members, and then good morning also to our participants. I see the numbers going up with almost about 300 now. So a special good morning from all of us at Deloitte, West Africa. So on behalf of the partners of Deloitte Ghana and across West Africa, I especially welcome everyone to today's section. So the future of work. We slept and we woke up, and in December 2019 we woke up, and before we realized we were already in the future because of the events that happened. A lot of the things that we were actually thinking they were going to happen in the future, all of a sudden we had to deal with them, and I've had to deal with challenges with how we actually combine our work. Our society is such that having interaction with people is something that we admire, something that we adore. So we are in our peak season. Some of our clients, they have different strategies. They are struggling to work from home and so be able to meet the demands and all of that. So when this topic came, I was so excited and say, I want to be part of this, and I want to see what the expert thinks about. Are we already in the future? Are we now starting? How is the future going to look like? And I don't want to take the wind out of the expert's mouth. I'm an accountant. That's what I like to do. My name is Danosu. I'm the country managing partner. There's just a background. I work with Deloitte for about 23 years now. That's the only thing that I've done throughout my life. I'm not sure if you give me another work, I'll be able to do it. I'm looking forward to this webinar and the discussions that is going to happen today. I want to especially thank the panelists for the time that they're going to spend with us and to take us through this topic. I'm looking forward to this. So on behalf of the partners of Deloitte West Africa and on my own behalf, I want to open the webinar today and wish everyone, those of you on the other side and our panels, good discussions, and looking forward to be part as we delve deep into this topic. Thank you. So Aveku, I will hand over back to you. And we are just looking forward to insightful discussions and all our questions being answered today. Thank you. I hand over back to you.
Thank you very much, Dan. We'll play a short video and then we will start with the presentation session.
Pam is the African Human Capital Leader for Deloitte Consulting. She's also a member of the Africa Consulting Leadership Team. In her Human Capital Consulting Leadership role, she is responsible for human capital practitioners focused on helping organizations solving their most complex and pressing human capital issues. She led a team with the view that amidst the digital revolution taking place, the businesses that will succeed won't just be those that are most technology advanced, it will be those that are human too. The pressing issues that Pam and her team help clients solve are transitioning to the future of work, activating the digital experience, elevating the human experience, optimizing human capital balance sheet, and the future of proving the organization. Pam is a master practitioner with the SABPP and a speaker at a number of conferences.
Good afternoon to you all. By way of introduction, my name is Pam Maharaj. I lead the Human Capital Consulting Practice for Africa at Deloitte. And today I am going to share with you our thinking and insights around the future of work in a post-pandemic world. For the last 3 years, we have framed our narrative around the future of work in terms of 3 dimensions. The first one is around the work, and we ask the question, what work can be automated? The second dimension focuses around the workforce, and the question that we pose is, who can do the work? And the third interconnected dimension around our future of work narrative is around the workplace. And here we ask, where is the work done? There is no doubt that COVID-19 has accelerated the future of work agenda. It is here and it is now. And at the start of the pandemic, we outlined 3 phases that resilient leaders would have to navigate in leading their companies through the pandemic. The first is around respond, and here it deals with how an organization has to look at the present situation and manage continuity. Think about what you had to do over the last year, transitioning to working from home, putting in health and safety protocols for those essential service employees, and ensuring that as a company or an organization, you have business continuity plans to ensure that you actually stay in business. The second phase is around recover. And here it's about how an organization learns and emerges stronger. And the third phase is thrive. It's about how an organization prepares and shapes the new normal. As I reflect on the last couple of months, I find that most of our clients emerged from the respond phase and have transitioned into the recover phase. Leaders have been encouraged to take 5 key actions as they prepare to recover. Reflect, recommit, re-engage, rethink, and reboot as they plan and strengthen their positions in the market. As we enter the second quarter of the calendar year 2021, it is time to look forward and prepare to thrive. What is clear to me is that thriving in the future will not mean the absence of challenges and disruptions. Instead, it means adapting, adjusting, prioritizing, and creating resilience to manage through instability. And as we shift to thrive, what are the outcomes that we have experienced in terms of the future of work over the past year? Let me start with the upside. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen organizations and workers rise to the occasion, unveiling human potential at its best. Whether it is individuals more freely adopting remote or virtual work, seeking new ways to collaborate, being more deliberate about what work is essential and what isn't, and leveraging the power of technology in new and different ways. But we have also seen unintended consequences. Well-being has taken a toll. Workers say they feel increased anxiety and isolation. There is a loss of a sense of belonging, a recurring theme that we are finding across companies and across industries. We have created an environment where we want to do more with less. The average workday, for example, has lengthened by 48.5 minutes, with 13% more meetings each day. 57% of mothers and 32% of fathers of children younger than 18 report that their mental health has deteriorated during the pandemic, and the impact on women has been profound. These unintended consequences should not come as a surprise to us all. Throughout the technology evolutions that have shaped the modern workplace, from the invention of the steam engine to the personal computer to the smartphone, we have designed work without regard to the worker. Work has been the sum of a series of tasks and activities grouped into processes and measured by output, organized in an assembly line and automated by machines. With the onset of the fourth industrial revolution and the development of smart machines and cognitive technologies, we started to do the same thing that we have always done before. We implemented software to complete routine tasks, generated enormous amounts of data, and pushed human workers to keep up with robots on the factory floor. But we failed to create new value by unleashing human ingenuity, focusing on efficiency rather than reimagining the nature of work and what humans are capable of achieving. In my view, at this point, we should actually take the time to step back and consider if organizations have been forced to accelerate to the future of work because of the constraints of the pandemic. What choices can we make once the constraints come off? Is the future of work we've seen over the past 10 months the same one we want for the next 10 years? In my view, it is a great opportunity to look at how we humanize the future of work. And humanizing the future of work for me is not about putting people ahead of machines. Instead, it is about designing a future of work that is essentially human. Humanizing the future of work requires leaders to do three key things. The one is to set an enterprise mindset, driving the importance of humanizing the future of work as a strategic priority. Two, recognizing that the biggest motivator for humans is work itself. And this requires formulating a vision for the future by putting work at the center and defining the new future work outcomes you want to achieve. And three, reorienting from past performance to future potential. Focusing on human potential as the largest and most valuable asset that an organization has. And so humanizing the future of work in a practical way for me means moving from looking at work as a process where there are tasks and activities to designing the future of work where we actually do not miss the opportunity to unlock real value, whether it is for customers, the organization, the workforce, and society at large. That work is just not a series of steps or outputs. Work is what motivates and inspires people, and work is the center of creativity and innovation. And today, work is increasingly owned by a network of teams. On the workforce dimension, we are unlikely to go back to a time when most talent was constrained by the old models of our organizations, nor should we want to. The key to success going forward is tethering the unleashed workforce to the organization's purpose, building a sense of connection both to work itself and to the larger organizational ecosystem. And in terms of the workplace, as COVID-19 has made clear, the workplace is not limited to the physical building, plant, or office. It also includes the broader environment that workers operate in, their home environment, their work environment, and even the spaces and coffee shops in between. We need to view the organization as a structural construct that needs to be engineered for efficiency, as well as a social construct that needs to be nurtured to bring out the best in people. And as you would have seen in our global 2020 human capital trends, the three attributes that represent the DNA of a social enterprise at work revolves around purpose, potential, and perspective. And so, as we look at the three areas in terms of humanizing the future of work, what are the questions that you, as human capital practitioners and as leaders in the business, need to be asking? The first is around re-architecting work and putting work at the center. The questions that you should be looking at: are you focusing on the right outcomes that drive the business forward? Are you using technology to transform work in ways that allow humans to perform at their best? In terms of unleashing the workforce, how do you access the skills and capabilities that are most critical to organizational success? How do you engage the expanded workforce, those that are outside of your income statement and balance sheet, that includes contractors, the gig economy? How do you engage with them effectively to motivate them and unleash their potential? And very importantly, how do you build a resilient workforce that is capable of adapting to the constantly shifting skill and capability requirements? And the third aspect in humanizing the future of work is around adapting the workplace. What does dynamic stability in the next normal look like? How do you adapt the environment for greater agility and flexibility, including redefined workplace and a digitized workforce experience? How do you design an organization structure that allows and encourages teams to collaborate in agile, cross-functional teams? And finally, or in conclusion, I think that by shifting the way we think about work, the workforce, and the workplace, and that by focusing on re-architecting work, unleashing human potential, and adapting the workplace environment, organizations, irrespective of which industry you're in, you can build resilience, capitalize on your ability to evolve with dynamic stability, and start to thrive.
Joseph has over 21 years experience in consulting, 10 of which has been in human capital management. He is an expert in talent management strategies, recruitment, competency modeling, total reward strategy, project management, performance management, HR strategy, customer delivery, staff audit, and alignment. Joseph is a professional member of the Society for Human Resource Management.
Thank you very much, and let me say once again, good morning to everyone on this particular webinar. I want to believe that you can hear me. Joseph, can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, Joseph, we can hear you, and it is very clear.
Okay, fantastic. So let me apologize for the break in transmission. Like we said, it's part of what Pam was talking about in terms of the challenges with future of work. But I think I would rather want to be quite practical about this session and just taking from cue from some of the things that Pam has spoken to. Now, like Pam did mention, future of work, it's been a journey and it will continue to be a journey. People do ask me that question: when is the future? Is the future now, or was the future yesterday? The reality is the fact that future is actually now. And if there's anything apart from the future, maybe it could be another future or thereabout. But speaking strictly to future of work, I think I would rather want to step back a bit and demystify this future of work. I'll be willing to break and let Pam take over whenever she's available. Now, so when you look at in terms of the rider to the topic of today, or the theme of today, it says transiting. Talk about talk about workforce, workplace, and of course the work. So try to keep it very simple. What is future of work? I mean, I'm sure if this question is posed to anyone on this call, you probably will have different definitions. But what we typically say in Deloitte is the fact that when you look at organizations, right, you recognize that at every point in time in the journey of an organization, either that you are restructuring, either that you are responding to market development or trends or industry updates, the one thing that is clear is that your response would in one way or the other bring together three connected dimension of the organization. And what are those three dimensions and connected dimensions? One is the work. You will think about the work, just like Pam had said earlier. What is the work to be done? The second thing you think about is who will do the work, so the workforce. And the third thing you think about is where should the work be done. So for instance, if I'm in manufacturing or I'm in financial services, and I talk about delivering my goods, for instance, from a manufacturing perspective, you talk about your supply chain, you talk about creating your outlets, your branches, if you're a bank, depending on what you do. Now, when you start thinking about that, you're thinking about issues around, of course, where should, maybe the issue of the workplace. Now, you also start thinking about who should do this work. Do I need to hire this? Do I need to hire that? Do I need to get a contractor? Do I need to get people on, who are going to be on my payroll? When we talk about future of work, what is it that comes to our mind? Pam has taken time to talk about future work post-COVID. But I want to just say, future work is not about COVID. So she's taking us, which is the right turn to say, post-COVID, what are we doing? So, but the point is the fact that COVID was just an accelerator of future work. So, if we ask ourselves today, what are the things that we see in our place of work? What are the kind of trends that we see? We see that technology is growing at a very exponential rate. We'll see that we're having what are called new workforce demographics. We're seeing new things changing. We are seeing new people coming to the workplace. We're seeing a lot of attention being paid to data collection. The fact that data is making a lot of difference in terms of how things are done, or how we refer or we make reference or use data. And we see a lot of people doing a lot of data collection today, more than we've ever seen in the last several years or thereabout. So we've seen we're also seeing the issue around the change in terms of even the fact that some work are becoming, or jobs are becoming vulnerable. And that's the reality, whether we like it or not. Interestingly, I was watching a video this morning, and it's from, and I'm sure Pam can speak to that, from a hotel in South Africa. I first saw that it was Alibaba Hotel, where of course, right from the way you enter the hotel to you get to your room, you're attended to by robots. And then I'm seeing the same thing happening today in South Africa. Now that tells you a lot, that a lot of things are here and they're here to stay. So what am I trying to say? It's the fact that of course, as people are talking about, the fact that people's jobs are becoming vulnerable to automation, and people are worried as to whether they're going to lose their job, whether their job will remain. So that's what has been with us even before COVID-19. We also have seen this issue around changing career, how people see career. We see things around learning. People are asking questions around, do I want to do learning the way I used to do learning before? People are already talking about flexi work hours. The 9 to 5 is no longer making sense to people. We're talking about even what to call, the rise of the gig workers. We see that also happening, and it's increasing by the day. We see people also asking questions around, their careers, like I said, and we're seeing, in other parts of the world where people are 90, they're 80, and they're still in the workplace and are still doing well. Now, so what am I saying? All these things put together, are things that, prior to COVID, already changing the way we do things. Now, what COVID did was only to accelerate some of these things, and which is like Abeku said when she was doing the introduction, the fact that what we thought would happen, or in 10 years' time, happen in 2 years. So the point I'm trying to make is, with or without COVID, future of work is here to stay, and I think it's important that we begin to we talk from that premise so that we can understand, again, and then I can link that to what Pam had said. So what Pam had done, so I was trying to explain the fact that I also going to try and project a bit more. I was trying to explain the fact that COVID, future of work has been with us prior to COVID-19. COVID-19 came as an accelerator, and so what I will say is that prior to COVID-19 and post COVID-19, future work is with us. And what PAM has done is to help us to shape it from that post-COVID era. What are the things that are important and what are the things that we need to look at? But again, try to simplify this whole future work construct. And which is why the story I was telling earlier, that as an organization, you will agree with me that at any point in time, if you're going to do anything, either your strategy, articulation, or implementation, you will think about three things at that point in time. You think about, how we're going to get this done, what kind of people do we require, what kind of talent do we require to get this done. And you're going to think about, do we need to restructure our workplace? What do we need to do to get things done? You also have to think about, the work itself. What are the kind of things that should be done? What kind of work should be done? And that's why I start talking about, we need to hire X, Y, Z, we have a job description and the rest. Now, what we're saying in terms of future work, keeping it very simple, it is saying how, when we look at the three, connected dimensions of the work, the workplace, and, the work itself, the workforce rather, then we talk about the future of work. In other words, how do we respond to those three things? Because those three things are actually changing. Technology is changing how work is done. Technology is changing even the workplace itself. Technology is even changing the way the workforce even responds to things. Now, the same way when you look at the issue around demographics, the way a millennial will want to react or respond to things is completely different from the way, a baby boomer will want to respond to it. Now, if you also look at the issue around career or the way even, from the standpoint of job itself. Now you get to see a good example earlier of the robot, serving people at the hotel, right from the entrance from the reception to your room to the point that serves you food. Now those things are changing. Those three things. So we're saying organizations we then need to respond to those things, and the way they respond, the way to when they think about those things, what are they thinking about? They're thinking about the future of work, because those three dimensions are they are connected and they can't be broken, right? You can't think about work and leave the workplace and leave the workforce. So what are we talking about? What Pam had said is to help us to situate those three things and say, in the post-COVID era, how do we respond to those things? Now let's step back and say what is happening in this part of the world, in West Africa. Now, over the last 3 years or thereabout, or let me say 2.5 years, we've done quite a number of webinars where we talk about the future of work, what is happening, how people responding to it, putting CHROs in the room, just like we talk about this morning. Now, what do we see? First and foremost, we see a lot of some of the things that Pam had spoken to. From the workforce perspective, now the initial reaction is, for the first time, organization became agile. So let me explain what I meant by that. Prior to that period, organizations were talking about, we're going to be agile, we're agile in what we do. But for me, for the very first time, I see organizations becoming agile because they had to do some things, and midway they stopped doing it, rethink those things, and they had to do something differently. Now, what does that mean? They became quite agile in terms of learning to understand that you have to fail fast and recover quickly. That if scientists are not working. So when Pam was talking about in terms of how we respond, we recover, and we thrive. So when organizations were trying to respond, what was the response to COVID? Now the response was, okay, what do we do? Do I ask people to stay back at home? Do they come to work? What do we do? So there was a lot of models that organizations tried. Some failed, some didn't work. So what does that mean? Organization became agile, and that's one of the things that future work is talking about. Now, so the other thing from a workforce perspective is that we also found that for the first time, the workforce are beginning to say, oh, you know what? Now I can work from home. Oh, now it is now flexi work has now become part of it. I know today there's also a lot of discussion going on as to whether this new normal that we're in, whether we are going to continue to hold on to this new normal or we'll go back to our conventional way of doing things. And I can tell you clearly that I know organizations today that have said, we will not go back. We'll do things in a different way. And so that's one. So the issue of the fact that organizations are beginning to now think about flexible ways of working, we see that in our own environment in West Africa. And I can tell you clearly, I was in Ghana some 2 years ago. I was talking about our HC trend. And I recall some of the feedback we got at some point. Someone had said, someone gave a story, and the story was she had recruited 7. I don't know whether the person is on this call. She had recruited 7 young graduates, intelligent, smart. And the one thing, and I think some 6 months into the journey, some perhaps left, but one of them, right, that struck me the most was the fact that the person left and he resigned using a WhatsApp message. He did not send a letter, it was a WhatsApp. Sorry, I'm done, I need to do something else. That's the millennials for you. Today, talk about the perennials. That's millennial for you. They do their things differently. So what do we then see? For the first time, we're seeing people now thinking that, okay, no, this real future of work, sorry, this flex work can come to play. Now, we also begin to see organizations where, people are rethinking how then do we support our people for us to be able to get the best from them. So one of the things that Pam spoke about earlier is we're now beginning to see people talking about well-being. Well-being is now becoming becoming top on the agenda. The way people are thinking, how do we ensure that the health of our people are important? How do we get the best from them? The third thing that we're seeing from a West African perspective, I'm not talking about from the positive, and I'm going to go to the other side of the flip side, is the fact that we're seeing a gradual shift from presence to productivity. Now, prior to future of work, we're used to, and COVID-19 anyway, we're used to, you must see the person today, see the person next day, and that's where the person is working. But we suddenly realized that the person is not going to be in the office 24/7 anymore. And therefore, it's not about the presence, but it's about the productivity. And therefore, we see organizations start rethinking, their performance management framework to say, how then do we get performance out of people to ensure that we get the best from them? Now, the other thing we see today is the fact that we're seeing people collaborating a bit more than what they would have done. That has no flip side, which I'll talk about. So we also see collaboration being driven, being addressed, and people are beginning to see that. And of course, people now learning to use all manner of collaborative tools. We see learning changing. Learning is changing. What it used to be before. Today, people have realized that people sitting in the classroom having this physical learning, that is changing, and that has changed dramatically in the last 1 year. So see people are still doing their learning, and suddenly realize that they can actually do their learning via a virtual means. And not only that, now we're thinking the fact that macro learning has become quite critical. The fact that this whole idea around digital learning, where of course learning is not about is not driven by the organization, but it's driven by the individual. What we call the employee-led learning, and when people are being empowered, and people are, I'm sure you all saw during this period, the likes of Harvard Business School, some of the Ivy League school releasing free courses, and people are going there doing those courses. So learning has changed. Now, the other thing we're seeing is the fact that under the future of work, we're seeing that from a skills perspective, that it's no longer about individual skills, it's about enterprise skills. In other words, people are recognizing that we need to rethink how we build people's skills, how we develop their skills, and the fact that how we use those skills. So the emphasis is no longer on the job, but more on the skills that people have, and people can actually apply those skills in different places. Now, the other thing we're seeing is the fact that we're seeing, people begin to what do you call it? So maybe more from in terms of the growth, or what I call the growth of open talent. Again, prior to now, we realize that a lot of time people are not prior to COVID-19, sorry, prior to future of work, sorry, we just think that it's having everyone on the payroll. But suddenly we realize that now these people are not even, I'm seeing them every day. Now they're not available. They're not there. They're working from their different, places. And about and on the back of that, we suddenly realize that we can actually do a lot. Even where we don't have our people in the office, and therefore we can extend that to having what we call contract workers, freelancers, and so on. So these are some of the things we've seen from this perspective. From this part of the world. I'll try and stop at this point because I really want to make this quite interactive so that we can get more feedback from from the audience, and of course allow the other panelists to be able to provide some context in this on this particular topic. So at this point, I want to stop, and I want to believe that you'll probably be able to relate to some of the things that I spoke about. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Joseph, for that insightful presentation. We are moving on to the panel session where we can discuss the various issues Joseph and Pam have raised. Let me also remind you that you can use the Q&A feature to ask questions. So if you have any questions, kindly use the Q&A feature. We will address the questions as we go along. Also to remind you that it is being recorded and it will be available on our YouTube channel, Deloitte Ghana YouTube channel, and all of the soft copies of the presentations will be sent to all participants. Thank you. So Joseph, if you could kindly play the video for the panel session and then we can move.
Miss Ama Bene Amponsa is a Doctor of Applied Leadership candidate. She holds an MBA in International Business from Coventry University, UK, and an Honor Bachelor of Science in Administration from University of Ghana. She has also completed executive education at Columbia Business School in New York. At present, she holds a position as Executive Head of Human Resource at MTN Ghana. Previous to that, she was the Senior Manager HR and Senior HR Lead. She has been recognized as a leader in HR practices, having been awarded HR Personality of the Year 2019 by Instinct Wave Awards, and she was rated at the top of 50 HR practitioners in Ghana for the year 2018. Anita Riafe Essino is the CEO of OML Africa, a human capital consultancy. Anita is a leading international human capital specialist. She holds a Bachelor of Science in Applied Psychology and Social Research from the London Metropolitan University and a Master's in Organizational Psychology from Birkbeck University. She's also a member of the Chartered Institution of Personnel and Development UK, the British Psychological. She is an arbitrator and mediator for the National Labour Commission of Ghana, a certified score trainer in the International Labour Organization. She's well known across the continent for her passion for human resource development, with over 3,000 HR and senior leaders in her network across Africa continent. Irene is an HR generalist at heart, and her holistic understanding of strategic human resource management expertly prepared her for a career journey that include a role in HR management, HR director, regional head of HR, and business services executive. Known around the continent as change agent, her focus on transformation is evident as she led significant organizational change and effective programs in oil, gas, banking, and telecommunication industries. Having been a business partner to CEOs, MD, and senior leadership, she has effectively changed the status quo on placing HR at the center of many business decisions.
Thank you very much. And I kindly ask that all panelists turn on their cameras and their audios. Just to do the rounds, if every panelist could say hi so that we are sure we can hear you clearly.
Hi.
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 Okay, great. So, Joseph, I hand over to you.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Anita, for joining us here. Thank you, Irene. Thank you, Ama. And of course, thank you, Pam, as well. I think for me, it's quite an interesting time and discussing an interesting topic, to be honest. So I'm going to just start very quickly and ask, I'm going to just go from interestingly, I mean, all the panelists they are female. Don't worry, we'll try and do a bit of a reconstruction along the way. All right, but that's fantastic, and I love that. So I want to start very quickly with asking each panelist to just talk for like 2 minutes. What's your take on this topic? What's your view? Right, before we then go to the questions and answers in itself. So maybe let me start with Anita. Anita, you want to just speak for 2 minutes? What's your take on this particular topic?
Sorry, just repeat the question. I didn't hear. What?
So what's your view on the topic? What's your view on the future of work? Just your general
What's
view.
my view on the future of work? Okay. Well, my view is that we're actually already in the future of work. I don't think there is going to be a moment where we say, okay, yeah, now we're starting the future of work. We are already in it, and I think the pandemic has highlighted that fact and also has shown the key areas that businesses and organizations need to focus as they plan. For me, in taking out all the jargon and the keywords and all the big words, to me, the future of work means preparing your business and your organization to be future ready to continue at the local, national, and global market, to be able to continue to compete. So that's what we're talking about. So that means it needs to be fit for purpose for the future. And this means that, as Pam very well put across, you need to look at work. So bringing it down to what we mean by work, how are you how you produce and provide your services. That's what we're talking about, your core work activities. How is that working, and how is that going to change in the future? The workforce, how are you going to attract, train, develop, and retain the workers that you need to make sure that you're obviously achieving what your business does? And then the workplace, for me, it's not just a matter of what type of an environment you adopt, whether it's working from home or a hybrid or whatnot. It's also about how you create a good working conditions for your workers. And we know this because we know all the generational workers in the environment are motivated by different things. So working in hybrid may work for some employees, working from home totally as maybe remote working may be just good for somebody, and so on. So you've got to also look at the good working conditions, because that's going to play a very key part. And what's the relevance of this? Well, failure to plan generally means you're just planning to fail. So the relevance of this means that if you don't look at some of these things, what's going to happen is that your business or your organization is going to be left behind, or is going to be lagging. You're not going to be competitive. You're not going to be the employer of choice or attractive to workers. And we know that one of the things of the future of work.
So Anita, let me interject. So thank you very much. Hold your thoughts for now. I'm going to come back to you. All right, thank you very much. So let me quickly move to Irene. Irene, what's your view?
Thank you very much. Good morning. I take it. Let's take it from a different perspective. So I think when I look at this future of work, I think at the moment we tend to look with our lenses today, as opposed to looking at our lenses in the future. And that sounds strange and very weird. And how can we do that? Because I'm sure you and I know 10 years ago, the things that are happening now, we couldn't even contemplate. So for me, my reality is, we need to talk a lot about the skills development for the roles that we quite don't really know that's going to really feature. We can talk about some roles that are up and coming and some skills that we actually need. But I think that we need to be looking at how we prepare ourselves as individuals to be able to really compete, have an opportunity to compete for these future jobs. So for me, it's a lot about the skills development. When you've then got the right skills development, you've got that foundation, right? You can then talk about, from an organizational or business perspective, how you can then elevate your business to the next level. So for me, it's also about skills development. I'll leave it there.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Irene. So let me go to Amma now. Amma, your initial comments?
Just to piggyback both what Irene and Anita rightly said, I think we've always had a future of work. We have always had a future to look forward to. And it's mainly because the future of work is actually impacted by the trends that you see happening in the future, be it technology, be it globalization, whichever area you want to look at that from. But just to sum it up, every future of work is situated in an ecosystem, a larger ecosystem of what is happening around us today and into the future. And once you're able to look at things from that perspective, from a human capital management perspective, I think you're able to manage that better. And also, if you have to narrow it down a bit, you should look at your industry, you should look at your strategy, you should look at what is happening around the world, you should look at the people out there, you should look at the talent you have available out there. And it's a whole broader, spectrum that I think we should be considering in this discussion. But most importantly, we've always had a future, and it's not going to stop today. We'll continue having futures, and we should prepare for the larger ecosystem that supports that future from a business perspective and from a people perspective.
Excellent. Thank you very much. I mean, I listened to, I wanted Pam to comment, but I'm going to just talk to. So I hear, this from Anita to Irene and then to Amma, who has said things around future-proof organizations, fit for purpose, skills development, thinking about the larger ecosystem, and also getting yourself ready, for that ecosystem, for that future. And the fact that the future is actually now. I also heard the fact that the future started from before now anyway. Well, let's quickly, let me ask this question, and I'm going to quickly go back to, Anita again. Anita, so from your understanding of the markets, that the Ghanaian market, or the Ghana market rather, how would you say how relevant is future of work to that market? Do you think? So let me try and put it in two ways. It's twofold to the question. So one is the fact that, how do you think, or let me put this differently, do you think the market or the is ready? Do you think we are ready in Ghana for future work? Let's put it that way. Because again, it is relevant. It is relevant. Do you think it's important? Or do you think we are ready for it? That's one. And the second thing will be, just like we said earlier, it's future proof, it's fit for purpose. If you were to explain this to a layman in Ghana, how would you still explain future work as being fit for purpose, or as a future proof organization, fit for purpose, or would you explain it differently?
Right.
So, Anita,
so yeah. So in terms of the first
readiness
question, which is are Ghana or employers ready for the future of work? I think there's two ways of looking at this. With any form of change which we are in, you're either going to be planning and getting ahead, or staying in line, or you're going to be dragged along. And I would say that the answer to that question is that if organizations were not before taking certain areas of their business or certain factors that we're discussing here seriously, I think the pandemic, talking directly from ground, have gotten a lot of businesses, small, medium, and large, to multinationals, to kind of relook at the way that they are managing work. So I would say yes. I would say that a lot of Ghanaian companies have had to sit up and now have to take some of these things that perhaps maybe seem very far away, and acknowledge that actually it's happening now, and we have to look at it. And you can tell by a lot of the initiatives and activities that has happened across industry. Obviously, we don't have time, we're not going to go into so much of that, but a lot of things have changed, from manufacturing, from the financial, from the insurance in Ghana, and a lot of the changes in the way that they've used the different systems to survive, and also some are saying they're actually going to keep these systems, tells you that, companies are woken up and they've sat up. The levels will obviously vary, because in all this there is a cost element, and it's about capacity as well. Now, moving on to your second question, just remind me which was the second question.
How will you explain future work to a layman in Ghana?
To the layman. Well, that's what I was saying. It's about, kind of preparing your business to be able to continue to compete, whether you're competing at the local, national, or global markets. But if you want to talk about in terms of practicalities, like what is it that I'm supposed to be doing, then of course we know that technology plays a role. But when we talk, we just use just one word, and it kind of is meant to represent everything. Even within technology, the technology that you need to look at has to be very much related to your industry. And we have different types of technology, from mechanical, electrical, from industry to manufacturing, medical, and communication. So where you do your innovation is dependent on what industry you're doing. So for example, we know that in Ghana, when we talk about technology, you find a lot of companies may have ERPs, which is dealing with like the enterprise management processes, so finance, sales, etc. But when you go to the resource, very few companies we did a research in 2019, it was about only across the continent, or when we had about 15 or 20 countries participate, and we found that only 30% were actually using HMIS or HMIS or any form of HR software. Now we know that in a pandemic moving forward, where pandemic is here to stay, for HR to be practical, it needs to automate. A lot of HR practitioners that I speak to across the continent, some were very honest in saying, when the lockdowns happened, I couldn't do much. They had Excel, but they couldn't do much because, or they had to carry on trying to manage using manual practices. So technology is something, as an organization, we talk about the future of work, you've got to look at in relation to the type of business and industry that you're working in. I think Amma mentioned about the people, or maybe it was Irene, how the people that you're going to need and what you're going to be upskilling. Skills is very important. And again, we're not talking about just skills that we normally have. What's your qualification? We're talking about making your staff able to adapt to the technological changes that you may use. So if you're in the manufacturing, you may decide that you're going to use intelligent machines. You're going to use robots. You know, meaning that if there's a lockdown, you may activate the system so the robots can be on site because they're not going to be contaminated, and you can control your production off site. This may be something, but you have to train your workers to be able to use that. So skills definitely is very important, but it's not just a matter of qualifications. It's actually specific skills for what we need for our business to function properly in the future. So I'll say technology, I'll say skills, and I'll say that, as I said before, the type of work environment we adapt are some of the things you need to think about.
All right, thank you very much. Rather to that, very quickly, I'm on this. Just taking it from where Anita stopped. If you had to explain or give an advice to, an executive in Ghana on how he or she, should prepare the organization for future work, what would that advice be?
Joseph, is that to me?
Yes, to Irene.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't hear my name. Okay, the advice. What advice would I give? Well, I would say, first of all, the reality is, as we've all said this morning, we are here, right? We are here. We're in the future of work. I mean, we've referenced COVID-19. This is a great example for all of us around the fact that we've had to adapt. That is our reality. So now what does that mean? That means when we're in this space of adaptation, it means that for a lot of people, they were going through 2020 kind of just figuring out, what do I do? What decisions do I make? What technology do I need? What skills do I need? For some organizations, they just tried to get through it, right? Let's be honest about that. For many organizations now in 2021, it really does mean that, hold on a second, I need to stop and fundamentally rethink my business model, my operating model, how I'm going to do things, because this reality isn't going away. Vaccine or no vaccine, it has opened up a lot of opportunity. So I think for me, the average or the executive out there is saying, what do we do? How do we go about it? The fact that you change certain levels or certain parts of your business to adapt, be it technology, be it remote working, be it retail. The fact that many of us were still going into the retail stores, right? And then the reality is e-commerce is now coming to us, and we know that we can actually do e-commerce. Brings a completely different dimension. So I think it is important. I think someone mentioned on the panel, we need to talk in real terms. There's a lot of jargon that goes on about the future of work, and it all feels really, really scary. What does that mean? We need to break this down and make it real for our people. And then we need to explain and make it real for the environment in which we work in. So that would be my response.
Thank you very much. So let me just go to Amma. So Amma, in your own, from your own perspective, how do you think, and I just taking from what Irene said, Irene talked about working from home, and there's a lot around what is remote working. In the first instance, people tend to have different understanding of what remote working means. Some believe it's working from home, some think it's hybrid, all kind of things. So how will you describe this? What's your understanding of remote working, right? And you think this should continue, or you think this is just for the period, for the now? So Amma, over to you.
Okay, for me, the way we define remote working within our space, okay, is more of anywhere work, anytime work. Basically, that's how we define it. So anywhere that you can operate at any time, not necessarily your home, wherever that suits you. I think that is it. We've given people who can afford to work remotely the option to work remotely, and we've equipped them to do that. But I think the challenge in a lot of Ghanaian environments around whether remote working works is the whole idea of productivity, and the whole idea, and from a people management perspective, how am I really assessing productivity and how can I prove to my business that people are being productive. Okay, we can talk about trusting your employees and all these nice things, but at the end of the day, the bottom line has to look great, and the business has to realize that it's not losing money. Okay, so from my view, from our experience, what we've noticed, we started trending or analyzing our trends from March last year to, let's say, year end. I'll give you up to year end data, and we noticed that productivity had moved up. That was the positive side that we saw from remote work. We realized that our EVP was a bit stronger in terms of what really appealed to people and what made people want to work for the organization. Was a bit stronger. Obviously, with remote work comes with the concept of some sort of work-life balance and some sort of flexibility as well, some sort of choice. And I think that for any individual is a plus. Then the last one was obviously the cost and efficiencies that we realized. Okay, we have a large team, and at a point, even space became an issue. So we actually introduced some sort of remote work in terms of flexi working to manage space and to manage all these things that we were juggling with. And all of a sudden, we realized that we didn't have to deal with some of these things because people didn't have to work from the office per se. We also saw things like even utility bills. You'll notice a sharp reduction in your trends in those areas. And all the other things that come with virtualization, from training to how you resource to, checking the pulse of the business, and all these things came out very positive and productive for us. But with it also came its downsides, okay, which I think have to be looked at as well. And we're able to see these positive trends because there was a deliberate effort to manage productivity, and there was deliberate communication to the larger base, the employees, the line managers, etc., that this is how productivity is going to be measured. This is what we are going to look at. This is what means that you are doing your job right or you're not doing your job right. Joseph, you raised a bit about how we even measure performance. Okay, we started focusing on impact versus looking at activity. So we started looking at a whole, it's a whole spectrum of things that we started looking at and measuring and making it visible to the employees and everybody that this is what we are doing and this is how it's going to be done. Okay, so those things helped with seeing the positives. Obviously, the downsides also came in. Not everybody can work remotely, and we live in Africa. Okay, not everybody has a home where they can even have private spaces to work remotely. We have all categories of employees. Some live with family members. Some live on their own. Some have young kids who have to budge in during meetings, etc. Some just cannot. I noticed this for the males versus the female. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of males on the panel to give us this view. But we noticed that the men wanted to show up in the office and work. They preferred working in a formal space than having to work from home. So these are all things that we started picking up, and it started showing over time in how people responded and how people, how people reacted with taking off their gloves. Okay, so in informal settings and in environments where you had to be a lot more yourself. We noticed that there was a bit more anxiety in the system. We noticed things like overlap between work and personal life. Not everybody was able to juggle that too well. We noticed things around isolation because some people just couldn't bear to be alone, okay, in their homes, etc. So as an organization, we also had to we have to be proactive in terms of how we support these people with these needs and what sort of partnerships we go into to help people with these challenges actually overcome them or support them during this period. So I must say it has its pluses, it has its minuses. But we should look at I think Anita Riley spoke about the employee experience. We should look at the individual employee, the human side of the person, see what works for people, give people a lot more choice and flexibility around things like remote working, and see what works for your business and ensure that you are measuring the right metrics to bring out the best. If I have to give you a bit about metrics, okay, on an average between March and December, average productivity was around 97% within the organization. Okay, and in terms of how employees rated their line managers, in terms of support from line managers, as well as accountability from line managers, it was trading around 98% on the average. So we saw an improvement even in our culture around line manager ownership and how employees saw their line managers prior to remote work and COVID. And you think that because they're working remotely and they're not seeing their line managers face to face, that would be worse. But we saw that spike up, that became better because they had more ownership on what they were doing. And also on the productivity, we saw higher productivity as well.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So I want to just quickly jump to some of the questions that we have in the Q&A box. So, and so this was directed at, yes, at Pam, but I'm going to just straight to the other members of the panel, and I'm going to also provide, context around this. So the question says, Pam made an interesting point about the impact of changes at tax, contracts, collaboration, would she have would she have any high level thoughts about how to reskill managers to operationalize and ensure continued employee engagement? So basically, it's speaking to employee experience. So let me just try and put it in context. So the context here is that Pans did mention the fact that there will be changes in employment contracts, which is normal, given the new. So if we talk about the open talents, working with freelancers, contractors, gig workers, of course, that means that you're going to have new ways of contracting. Even your people wants to do so. I mean, that people wants to do 2 hours a week or 3 hours a week, sorry, 2 days a week or thereabout. So Pam spoke about also the issue around collaboration, and the question here is that how do we skill our managers to continue to drive employee engagement? Anita, do you want to jump in? You spoke about employee experience earlier.
Right. Okay. How do we empower our managers? Sorry, sometimes I'm getting.
How do we reskill our managers to operationalize and ensure continued employee engagement?
Well, it's continuous improvement, isn't it? It's going to be around learning and development, but I think it's upgrading it, meaning that a lot of organizations, when it comes to L&D of the senior managers, if we just bring it to context into Ghana on the continent, however you want it. You have this thing where some leaders think that they have some particular title, so they don't need any more training, they don't need any more development, and even sometimes is the thought process of the organization. So you find that all the training is done at the middle, lower levels, but never at the senior executive. By this, I'm talking about the C level, the director level, the high level, and I am talking from direct experience where I've had leaders tell me, I am a director, I don't need training, like I've arrived. So that cannot be the case, as we can see in the scenario we're in right now, which we're being told is likely to repeat itself. We all have to, some organizations who have been on this type of thing probably coped better than others, but those who haven't thought about leadership development or had been developing their leaders to be adaptable, to actually have some agility, and were struggled in terms of business continuity planning, in terms of scenario-based planning and put solutions, they had no idea. So it means you've got to do an assessment, because I'm not really one for let's just get up and start doing things, or because it's being said out there. I'm always about assess the current status. You need to assess your current leaders, find out where the skills, where the gaps are, and then you need to develop training and development or personal development plans for each one, because not everybody is going to be the same. There may be some common core skills that the whole team need to have, but there's going to be individual requirements, individual needs. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that COVID has shown as an example that we need to get deeper in our leadership development. And maybe I'm saying that coming from an Oxide perspective in terms of assessment. And we need to start understanding the personalities of our leaders, and how that affects their leadership styles, how that affects their ability to take decisions and do some of these things that we're saying. Because a lot of the time people move into leadership and they've not even had any form of formal training on planning, on decision making, on solving problems. And what we're talking about is moving forward in the future of work, we need agile leaders that are adaptable, can change with things changing, they can deal with chaos, they can respond to difficulties, they can have difficult conversations like terminations and deal with the whole fiasco of changing the way we work. We need leaders that can move. Are you with me? And for us to do that well as well, we also need to understand the individual in how they're made up, all right, to get a full holistic development program that actually builds us those future leaders. That's what I'll say.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Anita. So just to add a few things to what Anita said. So I'll just talk about what I call the TAR approach. Okay, and I think that speaks to part of what you said. So the first thing is that at this time, or during this time and this period, we need leaders that in their own what do you call it? They can build their own DNA, a digital thought process. And what do I mean by that? So the first thing is that leaders must be able to think.
Yeah.
They must be able to act and they must be able to react. Those three things are important. Now, thinking means that they must, be able to envisage the future, right? And understanding that things are not going to be the same way anymore, and that they need to understand that there's also a learning process for the people they work with. And because if they need to be able to journey with them on that learning process, to understand that, and that means that at this point that leaders must be ready to accept mistakes. Not all the time, but they need to accept mistakes. You must have what to call a diagnostic view, or skill sets where you can see to the future. The other thing that leaders must also begin to, it's not a time to seek for perfection. They're able to get it. That's the reality, because it's a learning process. So they need to also be able to act in terms of being able to provide support, right? Showing their team the way to go, right? And the other thing that they need to also be able to react, when they need to respond to issues, how do they provide that guide, how do they provide that context? And like you said earlier, we need leaders who are, you use the word, I'm just trying to remember the word you use now. You need leaders who I can't remember, there's a particular word I thought it was very spot on. But again, the other idea is that we need leaders who can, who can reinvent themselves. Fantastic. Who can reinvent themselves, who are adaptable, which means that in themselves they are agile, and recognizing the fact that we can't do things the same old way or old ways. It has to be something new. And in doing those things, we need to be able to recognize that people are not going to do it at the same pace. We have to carry them along. We have to recognize them when they perform. We have to celebrate them. There are things that we used to do before now, but we should do them a bit more, right? And then when we need to also ensure that we provide our feedback, and that's what I want to say. It's also quite critical. Provide that feedback there and then. Feedback is not going to wait forever. Now you don't see the man every day anymore, unlike what it was before. You see the man, either via your the virtual platform. How do you provide feedback? Very honest feedback, and how do you encourage that person? And then of course they need to also learn and unlearn. That's the reality. That's what leaders need to do to be able to provide that leadership as support. So thank you very much, Anita. I'm going to just quickly jump to just a rather to that question. So sorry, I think the other thing around contracts. So let me explain that. So the point we are making is that today, once you begin to rethink, and if you did, I think Anita mentioned that if you did a survey, right, of people and ask your different, your workforce, right, and you ask them, you're going to have different answers from different people. Some will tell you that I don't want to work. I don't want to do remote working. I'm fine coming to the office and working. That's what I want to do. Some will tell you, what, I want to do 3 days a week. Some will tell you, what I want to do is just, work completely from home. So you have to have different answers. Now, what does that mean? It means that we're at the point where you have to be thinking, how do you understand the persona of our people? And then based on those personas, how do you now recognize the fact that you cannot continue to talk about your EVP in the old? It has to be now something that's completely different, recognizing that your workforce demographics, it's not exactly the same thing. That's on the one side. On the contract point of view, it means that once you look at those three sets of people, the contract you have to work with them, give to them will be different. Right. So that's on the one side. The other, so when I'm going to work 3 days a week, does it mean I want to give you the same contract? I want to give you a different contract. With some works 5 days a week. Now, what does that also mean from a tax perspective? It means that also have some tax implications as well. That was now to say, how do we deal with that tax related issue? And I think that was part of the question the person did raise. And I think we cannot but say, and like Amma said earlier, employee engagement must be on the front burner, and that's the truth. If you're going to actually get productivity, at the end of the day. So thank you very much. I think very quick close to that is the issue around, again, how do we help people? And that goes to I think that will go to Irene. Right. So Irene, sorry if I'm pointing this at you, but that's just so someone said, hi, wanted to know what's your advice to give employees to remain effective while working from home?
Okay. While working from home, did you say?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Okay, so I think
So as an employee, how do I remain effective working from home?
Okay, thank you. So I think this question, I'm sure we've answered this question. We've gone through this question over and over again, and I take it from a couple of perspectives. So number one, when we first were in this, we knew about the pandemic, from a working from home perspective. A bit like what Amma said, we were excited, right? We were like, oh my goodness, finally my organization is going to work from home. We took it as a bit of a novelty, and I'm sure then productivity was quite high and all of that. And then as we started to merge into this normal, all of a sudden it's, kids are at home, Zoom meetings constantly. It's just all of a sudden the blur between when work ends and when work begins is all a bit of a mystery. I think what I would say is, and we're at the stage now where it's like, okay, this is it. This is our reality. And I think this is an important point, because I feel like 2020, we went through those ups and those downs. And there was probably a sense with a lot of us that this will end, right? This will end and maybe things will get back to normal, or there'll be a slightly new normal. The reality is we're in 2021 at the beginning of the year, and we're still very much in this situation. So therefore, it really does mean a couple of things. We need to work on our mindset. We need to now say to ourselves, okay, this is the reality that we find myself in. I will be working from home for a long period of time. Things have moved on. Things have changed. And therefore, I need to sort of prepare myself for that. I need to put structures in place. Before maybe I wasn't putting necessarily structures, but I now need to put structures, systems, tools in place. I need to differentiate between when the workday starts and when the workday ends, or maybe I'll do a couple of hours in the morning because it's appropriate for me and my family, and then I can come back to it later on at night. That requires some engagement with the employer, doesn't it? That requires, well, we've got this situation going on at home. Is it helpful? Is it possible that we could do things slightly differently? So I think, first of all, there's a lot of procrastination that then goes on. We need to think about our mindset and prepare ourselves for the fact that the working day might be split up, might be very different, and therefore we have to have a different approach to it. We need to set boundaries. I think one of the things that I've heard from a lot of people is the lines are blurred. We're finding it very, very difficult to separate. And now, if you think about it, many of us are in semi-lockdown. So it's easy for you to just say, I'll just go and put the laptop on. I'll just go and finish this. And before you know it, I've spoken to people 10 o'clock at night and they're still working. So I do think it's a mindset thing. I do think it's a tools. I think it's being very intentional, Joseph. The word here is very intentional about making your workplace and your work environment very different, because you'll go into this world, if you're not careful, where it's an unhealthy space. And we know what that does to our mental health. I mean, that's one area that we don't often talk about, that I like to talk about around our mental health, our state of mind. At the moment, it's a roller coaster of emotions. I mean, people are burnt out, people are isolated, there are so many things going on. And I think that's where an organization can play a fundamental role in having your employee assistance programs, reaching out to others, sharing what your concerns are, your frustrations, in a confidential manner, just to help you get through this. Because I think at the end of this pandemic, there's going to be a lot of write-up around mental health, where we are, how we're thinking differently. And I think that is all having a mega impact in the human capital.
Thank you very much. That's quite insightful. So let me just go to Amma very quickly. But for my, I'm trying to shift my role now. I'm no longer a panelist. So from other members of the panel, please just prepare your mind when you talk about your closing remarks, not now. And my question is, do you believe that every future of work engagement is actually the workforce transformation? Just think about it. I want to come back to that. Did you hear me? Ari, did you hear me?
Is this for me? You said Amma. Is it for me or Amma?
Okay, so I said no. I said all No, all my panelists just prepare for this. That probably be
Okay.
the passing. I'm sorry, maybe the passing. I mean, the shot rather. So I said, in terms of the, sorry, my question was, do you believe that every future of work, engagement is actually a workforce transformation engagement? Just think about it. We will come to that at some point. Okay, so let me just quickly go to Amma. Amma, someone here said human capital development is a core HR function. In an era you cannot necessarily send staff to conference room for training, how do Ghanaian companies ensure that the employees continue to grow?
The reality,
Amma,
Joseph, is that.
you hear that?
Yeah, I heard it. The reality,
Yes,
Joseph, is that currently, even if you tell some employees you want to take them to the best colleges out there, they'll run away from it because they don't want to be exposed.
Right.
Okay. To
Very
the
true.
question, okay, that's a side issue. But to the question, I think there hasn't been a better time to develop people. And by development, I don't mean hardcore development, as in technical training, business school training, etc. But I mean actually preparing people for their day-to-day work and the day-to-day changes that they are facing in their work. And personally, I think organizations who've gotten this right and will get and are getting this right now are the organizations who will be most ready for what is ahead of them. And what I mean by that is that most people are not hiring now anyway, because a lot of organizations have budget freezes, etc. Most people have training freezes as well, training budget freezes as well. So they are also not, they don't have that money readily available for them to be spending. So as HR practitioners, I think it becomes important for us to reinvent how we train, how we develop people, and how we also get employees and interested in learning, creating the right learning culture that is required. Okay, and I'll use some of the examples that we have applied. And I think the first one that we did was to actually virtualize learning end to end. And what I mean by that is everything that we did physical, we put it into the virtual space and try to simulate it as best as possible to give it the same sort of excitement and the sort of zeal, etc., that you get in a formal or a physical setup. The only difference, obviously, you have to minimize the hours, etc., because people cannot be on Zoom or Teams or whatever all day. You have to look at how you can create some sort of the things that really interest people about conferences. So things around the networking, etc., that they get from these things. Try to virtualize that as best as possible was the first thing that we did. The other thing that we also focus on, which I will encourage, what I've actually appreciated about the learning community, and not just HR, general learning community in this time, is the amount of content available now. There's so much out there, and there's so much free content, like what we are doing now. Okay, and how do we as practitioners leverage some of these contents for value for our people? Because the more you generate content, the more content gets generated, or the more there's interest in content, the more content gets generated. And I think that actually shifts how learning, happens as well. The other one that I want to touch on here is the whole idea of, I think Pam touched on it. Okay, making learning simpler and shorter and easy to access. Okay, having bite-sized videos where people can access on the go. So even if it's a push through WhatsApp, I can see a 5-minute video about change management and it tells me that I can look at things differently. I can see a 2-minute video about the possibility of using AI to learn and it teaches me something different. I can see a 10-minute video about how somebody else is working or some best practice happening somewhere. That tells me that I can think differently and I can innovate differently. So these sort of new ways of sharing content and sharing learning, I think it becomes extremely important as well. The other one that I think we sometimes underestimate is knowledge share among colleagues. I think it's this is the best opportunity to create networks of people who enjoy learning and make it interesting. We're all human and we're all losing the sense of attachment and the sense of community. And if you're able to create this sense of community within your workspaces where the time that I get to interact with somebody outside the Zoom meeting is when we are talking about something that we've learned. I think it's a great thing to also encourage as a new way or a new wave to look at. A lot of online collaboration tools are available now, both formal and informal, to workspaces. I think we can leverage some of these for learning as well. The other one that for us, it's been an eye opener for us. Is the whole idea of using projects to learn and using what we learn in projects side by side. Okay, so true action learning in practice. Okay, so what we are doing now is we pick specific programs that we want to really encourage within that might be design thinking, be it agile, be it whatever you want to put out there. Okay, and what we try to do is that we put people on the programs, and they're also tied to projects that they have to deploy using these programs. So it forces people to want to learn about it and want to use it, because that's about the only way you can put it into action. And we're also doing it from a communal aspect. Okay, it's not just about individual learning, etc. So 10, 15 people on a project, 3 people on a project, and they are all using this learning tool or this way of learning to deploy that project. And I think it's an interesting one as well. It's forced us to be more projectized in how we work, and we are getting more cross-functional projects as well, because and it's also helping with the sense of community that we also want to build along this. And I think the other one that has also been very interesting, we always had an e-learning platform, but usage on the platform was very low. Okay, and obviously COVID has accelerated the usage on it. But one thing that I think I'll give credit to my learning teams on here that they did great with is the push content concept. Okay, so the same way that Netflix pushes to you content that they think you like because you watch 1, 2, 3 videos. And I think I might like this video, so I think you like this. So what they did was to trend what people were looking at on the e-learning platform, look at what had appeal for people. So if Ame's interest is change management and design thinking and agile methodologies, that is the sort of content I receive on a weekly basis. It forces me to look at it. It forces me to read a particular book. It forces me to look at how I can do this. So that whole push content concept, and I've realized that has a lot of appeal for some of the generations. I know Anita is very much into generational research, but some of the generations enjoy this a lot. Okay, the fact that you are telling me that I matter and you know me and you understand me and you know that I like this. It's like having a like on Facebook or having a like on Instagram or having a like somewhere else. So that sort of appeal, I think that also helps a bit. Then, but most importantly, I think you touched on it, Joseph, which will be my last point in here, is about how managers lead and how leaders lead. Okay, role modeling, ongoing learning, I think is more important in these times than anything else. Okay, you can train people as best as you want. You can put people through the best courses. If people who lead people don't role model certain behaviors and don't role model the learning, okay. So if you're talking about digitization, automation, etc., and you as a line manager, or you as the CEO, or you as a C-suite person, prefers to still get people to bring a dispatch rider to bring papers to your home for you to sign, then what are you truly role modeling out there? Okay, and you can do that because you are the top. And maybe you have the flexibility of a dispatch rider available to be sent. But what about your employee on the lower level who doesn't have the flexibility of calling a dispatch rider or the key and saying send it to you? So you are actually detached from what you are trying to message out there as your reality. So I think it's extremely important for leaders and for us HR people as well. If we also want to also message this whole idea of change, the future of work, etc., we should also promote it a bit more. Okay, and today all these things can be accessed, some for free, some for next to nothing, and you can still approve things online. You can virtualize everything that you want to give you value. And I said this was my last, but to add on to a point that Irene said around e-commerce, etc. Okay, just to say that look at even the trends in our markets. Okay, right now because of COVID, we all don't want to go out, so we are ordering food, we are ordering clothes, everything is coming to us at home. Okay, so if you believe that this is how people expect to experience that's their life, you should believe that this whole experience will also feed into the workplace eventually. In the workplace, we will actually are being forced to be the sort of employer who also can deal or manage people's needs from that same concept that the consumer expects to be dealt with. And I think that shift alone helps how we train, how we develop, and how we shape the mindset of learning.
Thank you very much. I think a lot. I'm usually worried each time we have this kind of session that whether 2 hours is enough. But we also need to recognize that people do have a lot of other things to do today. So I'm going to just quickly run through a few of the. My apologies, I can't take all the. I'll run through a few. I think some were already spoken to. And I think from what I'm reading here, the audience is liking. and the comments coming from the different panelists. Well, let's quickly speak to someone that said something here. It said, okay, I think we've spoken about that, but I think there's something around. I would like Amma to tell us more about her thoughts about the future of learning, and I think she's done that already, and general medium delivery education. So maybe you talk about the last part of it. As we spoke about the future of learning, we talk about macro learning. We talk about I'm sure I probably had peer-to-peer learning. We talked about learning being employee-led as opposed to empowering your employees. You can actually create your own. Talk about creation. You recall, spoke about that. You can create content on your own. If you take the like of G, for instance, they created content on their own, being done by their own people and it's being rolled out. And again, oftentimes, you learn from the things you do on a day-to-day basis, and there are opportunities for you to actually circulate that in your environment. But more importantly, it's basically also building that persona. And I think that's very important. I think that's one of the things that you also spoke to. Because if you don't understand the persona, you can't actually understand. That's what you said in the likes of LinkedIn will do or others will do, because they know what you like, because they understand you. And that's why they can actually push things your way. So again, you must be, I think she's done a lot around that. But I think there's a part around general medium delivering education. So maybe you want to speak to that in just 2 minutes. We need to then, so I will appeal to us to just cut our, responses so that we can bring this to some kind of logical close. So Amma, very quickly,
can you please repeat the question? What is?
What are your thoughts about the future of learning? I think you've done that. You've spoken to that. I think Anita has spoken to that as well. The other part is the general medium delivering education. What's your thought about it?
General medium
delivering education.
I don't understand.
So I get the point what he's saying is that beyond the learning in the place of work. So from the point of education,
educational system sort of.
Okay,
all right. To be very honest with you, that's an area that I think it's very interesting and very fascinating. It's an area where anybody in the job market, will care about, and that's why I believe our educational system. We should look at the entire ecosystem of people who push education within our countries, beyond just government. I think civil society, private organizations, firms like yours, etc., should show a keen interest in terms of the research that is coming out around some of these areas. But what I have realized is that we are churning out a lot of people out of our universities. And we are actually, these people also come out knowing that they finished their degree, so they are ready for the job market. And the reality is that there's still some level of disconnect between what is expected and what is needed on the job. But I also don't believe that it's all about what is taught in the classroom, but also even how we teach. Okay, we've had a fine opportunity during this period where for months, children couldn't go to school and they had to learn virtually. Okay. And personally, I think this is something that on our continent we should embrace, because we don't have universities available for every child in our countries. So if we can virtualize education and get more people access to education, it is a plus for us. And the reason why we should have everybody who is interested in that future participating in this future, and not just governments doing this alone. The second one is even content creation. Once again, we are still in a world where, or a part of the world is still very fixated on getting this particular degree and getting this particular course and coming out as in this particular profession. Okay, but all we are seeing in the trends ahead of us is that the consumer is dictating what is the future skill and what is the future need. Okay. So needs are actually coming from consumers and consumers across the entire, ecosystem. Okay. So how do we get the younger people or the students ready to address this need of the consumer without pushing people to think that the only way out is to become the next medical professional or to become the next this? It's great to have those and it's good to have those, but I think that the need out there is still very broad. And the way we educate our young people, we should look at a true need, the impact of what they'll bring to our larger societies in Africa. Otherwise, we will still continue dependent on the Western world for a lot of the things that we continue to depend on, because they are looking at it that way and we are looking at it very differently. So that would be.
Thanks, Amma. Yeah, I know. I don't allow you can. There's so many people that you speak to.
Joseph,
yeah,
can
please,
I just
please go ahead, Irene.
let me just can I add to what I'm saying, because it's so interesting, as she said. I think that what I would say is, and this is probably for another webinar, so I'm not going to take you completely off course, but the whole education topic, for many of us on this panel, we've met so many young people that are just not ready for the workplace. Right. And we're not talking about, like we've said, we're not talking about the degrees. We're talking about the skills, the attributes that are actually needed and required. But actually, I don't necessarily blame them, because it stems back from the education, right? It stems back from what you're taught education-wise. What's the curriculum out there? Do we have the teachers that are now capable of developing our people for the future of work? So we are sitting here trying to diagnose a problem today around what we're going to do for the future of work. But I think also, whilst we are doing that, there should be policy makers and leaders out there that are taking numbers of steps back to say the future of work, Africans can participate. And in order to do that, we're going to have to step back 5, 10, 15 years and prepare our young people for that, be it virtual education, be it STEM, be it the arts element of it, be it the critical thinking, be it the innovation, so that, for example, they are able to bring out the next Facebook, the next AI technology, the next algorithms and things like that. So I think part of this discussion isn't just about here and now, because, okay, we're here, we're now, we need to think about what we're doing, but it's also for others to step back, to look at what's behind us and prepare our young people for that work environment. Because often we have the degrees, we have the qualifications, we come into the workplace, we ask you to do a project, to use your initiative, that is then lacking. You don't know what the technology is, you don't know where to go and look for the solutions. And I think that is the biggest challenge and the impact of the future of work.
Thank you very much. That's fantastic, contribution. And one of the things we told people and we've seen is a fact that, and it's unfortunate, but that's a reality. So when we see technology going at an exponential rate, we see individuals, catching up with it quite quickly. We see the businesses lagging behind, and the worst, which is actually at the bottom of the ladder, is public policy, and it's a major challenge. And that's why, so we talk about education, we talk about what kind of environment we have. It's extremely important that we talk about that. Now, if you look at a country like Australia will tell you today that in the next, by 2030, we notice that the kind of skills we need as a country. And I mean, at some point they said they had about 23, I can't remember, 23 million thereabout. I've forgotten the exact number in terms of the skills gap that they have today between now and 2030. And they have a plan to develop, people to ensure they can actually get those skills. So it's not about, like I said, not about having those degrees, but again, in terms of acquiring the right skills, given the kind of work that we will see in the future. And that's why we say it's not about your job, but it's about the skills going forward. So that's a fantastic contribution from both Amma and then from Irene. Yeah. So I want people come to you. Anita, just hold your thoughts, because I want you to speak to something else. It's very, you can talk about it, but just add this to this. Someone has said, when you talk about future of work, we talk about three things. There's a cost, there's a value, and there is the meaning. Okay? So cost basically means that as an organization, we think about when we talk about future of work, we must be able to understand that equation that we're saying, how do we know what the cost side, right? That's important. How do we reduce our cost? Okay? Now, from the viewpoint of an employee, how would this whole thing make meaning to me? This whole trying to work, whatever I'm working, whatever it's your future of work, whether it's the workplace, whether it's the work I'm doing, and whether whether I'm working, side by side with machines or whatever it is, or the way I'm doing my work. How does it make meaning to me? Now, the other part of it is how do we create value at the end of the day for both the organization, the customer and then the employee. Right. Now, someone is saying here, from a cost perspective, that what you've seen, so working from home, cost seems to have reduced, so the office costs seems to have gone down, and the electricity seems to be, water, whatever cost from on the electricity, on data consumption, or whatever it is, they seem to have gone down. However, it's as these costs have now been transferred to the employees. How do you deal with that?
Are you asking me?
Yes, Anita.
Oh, okay.
That's a question from one of the.
They're saying that the cost has shifted to the employee. The cost has shifted to the employee. Okay, yes. So maybe just going to come out of this slightly, or actually, it's actually no, it's actually part of what you need to be thinking about. Well, from the labor law perspective, the cost should not shift to the employee. That's the first thing. So if people are working from home, there are things that the employer is responsible for, so the data. So really what is going to require is that you're going to have to review your remuneration, benefits and allowances. And in alignment with the law, we're saying that the areas that you can make adjustment because you're probably using variable pay is going to be around the duty type allowances. All right. So if you begin to see, let's say, for example, transportation is no longer an issue because you've decided that your back office should work from home. All right. So you want to eliminate that element. You're not really fully eliminating that because now you've got to think about the cost of data. All right. You've got to think about the cost of phone. Of course, we know best practice says you should separate personal from business. Some organizations are not always able to do that, but employees that are maybe, let's say, are doing sales from home now, which should have a company phone of some kind. You should be buying the data for them. They should have a company laptop. If you're expecting an employee to use their own laptop, it raises a whole lot of issues because we have the whole idea of security. It's about ownership. I know on ground when we hit the core of the COVID, there were issues where people had laptops, but their children were now at home and they have to do classes between 8 and 9, between 9 and 10 and 12. And that meant even starting work at 8 was a problem, and they only had one laptop, company can't supply it. So there had to be a variation in when work started in order to share the laptop with their children. So you've got to look at these things. There are resources that has to be thought about when we talk about working from home, and that is the responsibility of the employer to provide. Are you with me? Even if I take some clients in UK and Europe, I mean, you've had instances where people have brought their tables and desks and things because they're working from home to their home. If we bring it to the African context, somebody doesn't even have the space to have that table and chair. They are working from the floor. That's the reality. Let's not sit here and say everybody is having some house with some spare room to have office. Have you even done an assessment of your workers that are working from home to see that working from home is practical for them? And then you need to look at the resources that you should be providing. They should not be out of pocket, because during the time that they are working legally, they are under your watch, and you are supposed to provide the same resources, etc. you would do if they were physically on site. Sure. Labor laws have not changed because we're talking about the future of work or because pandemics is happening. You've got to find a way of aligning within the law and also thinking about a lot of the expectations of talent. Are you getting me? That me paying for my internet and all of those costs may force me to look for another job elsewhere. These are some of the
Thank you very much. Extremely spot on, and I can tell you that is what is on the mind of a lot of people. So thanks very much, Anita. I think at this point okay. So I'm constrained to ask only one more question, and then I'll then ask us to give closing remarks or parting shots, as it were, or or parting words. And after that, I will yield the floor to Daniel to provide us with some closing remarks and just to say thank you to everyone So my last question. So it goes to you, Irene. And then before talk about my other question. So the question is around. I'm just going to look at the question I think we have not spoken to, but I think we've answered a few of the questions. Um, um, so someone here says. So just 1 second. Speaking of contracts once again. So okay, fine. So let me take the first one. So that I know I've spoken to that. Someone said, working on your mindset is great. How do you work on the mindset of other employees to increase productivity? So that's one question. It's interesting, isn't it? And the other question is quite a long question, so I'm just trying to see. Speaking of contract once again, at a point in time in my company, some staff were asked to work from home during the partial lockdown, cross-functional team. Thus, only those staff had access to company operational software. So Irene, I'm sorry, Anita, maybe that's part of what you just spoken to. And only staff, and those only staff, I'm just reading the way it is, sorry. And only those staff, sorry, were working within the period. Yet, they were all being remunerated normally. And there was stress on the CFT staff. How can this be dealt with? Okay, so maybe I would ask Aaron, do you want to speak to that?
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Alma, maybe you speak to that. Sorry, Anita, because you have spoken earlier. So Aaron, I'm going to come back to you on the issue of the mindset, and that'll be the final question. Okay. All right, please go.
So do you want me to answer the mindset question now and then pass over to?
Okay, so I'm trying to go first, please. Go ahead with the mindset question.
Okay, all right. Okay, very briefly. So very good question. Thanks very much. I agree. We're challenged to work on our own mindset, aren't we? Let alone others. I think we can only lead by example. So I mentioned in my delivery last time that the organization, we also have to recognize as employers or leaders that individuals will need some level of support. Not everybody is going to come out and say, hey, I need some help here. So this is why sometimes we have these confidential kind of programs like the assistance programs that people can kind of opt into. What I would recommend for organizations is treat this as a topic, right? Treat this as a topic, and then, you can communicate on that topic. I think we've had examples of short videos nowadays. It no longer has to be a PowerPoint presentation. It can be a 1 minute kind of, it's plastered on IG or whatever it is. It can be a 1 minute message that really just talks about your mindset. You can have lunch and learns, for example, where you talk about these issues. I know that there are a number of good organizations out there at the moment that are taking this topic very, very seriously because they recognize the impact that they're having. So, of course, there's things that we need to do for ourselves, and we must take those steps. But the first step is recognizing that there indeed is a problem. Because I think some of the challenges, sometimes we as individuals, we don't really recognize that maybe we're a little bit more stressed than usual. Maybe we're going down the path of being quite depressed. You don't realize that your mood has changed. If you see that in your colleague, depending on what the relationship is with your colleague, you could approach your colleague. You could find out, is there a problem? Is there anything they could help with? Or as a line manager, you must be aware. I know that it may be slightly difficult because you don't see that person every day, but have check-in mechanisms. Where do you check in every week? You have a moment where you just give somebody a call just to find out how they are. But these are some of the aspects. But I would say that organizations need to lead this conversation. I think organizations have a significant role, leadership have a significant role to play around that whole mental health space.
Thank you very much. So I think I'll just quickly move to Anita.
Mm-hmm. So remind me of my question.
Did you get the question?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So the question is, so while I'll remind you, the question, but just while you're thinking. So, Amma, someone here said, as rightly said, there is a major disconnect between industry and academia. How do we match these two words so we don't have graduates who only have chew and poor knowledge without a practical experience? from industry. Amma, I'm sure, did you hear me, Amma?
Yeah, I can hear you. Thank you very much for the question, Joseph. What I would say is
sorry, Amma, 1 second. Sorry. I just want just hold your thoughts. I just wanted you to think about it while I then go back to.
Okay.
So just hold. Okay. So I then go back to.
Yeah. Was the question about technology?
So
just.
Give me 1 second.
Is it the one about some people could work, others couldn't?
Absolutely. Thank you.
Right. Okay. So the issue is, earlier on I had mentioned about the different types of technology. And that's something, yeah, that's what everyone needs to look at. I mean, for me, I would have to understand why some could work, others couldn't. But it really comes down to your collaborative tools, or the collaborative platforms that you're using. Like when Amma was talking, she made mention about the million. She knows I'm into that. But when Amma was talking, she was talking about intuitive collaborative platform. This is where the AI is working and actually trying to understand what the workers are looking at, etc., and making sure that it channels that information to that. And that's going to probably fall, let's be realistic, with companies that really have affordability to go for those type of platforms. But where you're in, and one of the issues we're having in Africa around technology is because technology is expensive, especially what we're talking about now, where we want people to work from anywhere and have access. So bringing it down to where you're obviously not having these types of budgets, it means that you need to look at the collaborative tools that allow you to have productivity, i.e. you want to be able to track work, whether in real time or you want to be able to come back and see, and you want the collaborative tools. I don't want to mention them because obviously we're on a different platform. If you want to know, just message me. But you want the collaborative tools that can actually even tell you how give you the analytics as to what you're working or not, how work is moving in terms of how much tasks we're churning out, which departments are doing the most, which there are collaborative tools, believe me, that will help you do that. But in this instance where it seemed like the way the organization is set up is that it's set up for those who have access to the company system to work. And therefore, in a crisis at that time, you just want to carry business continuity on, so they have to function. And therefore, those who went at home are at home and they're being remunerated. I am taking the hint in that question to mean some people were working, we weren't working, but we're paid. The issue is, as I'll mention again, the law doesn't change. In the Labour Act of Ghana, it says, if the employee turns up for work and you don't have work, you still have to pay them. So let's assume that's how your employer was working. But my advice would be that particular employer now needs to look at the way the work it's doing, because it is indicating that in the crisis, some areas of the business could not function from home. It had to close down and people have to go home. So now you need to look at what we're talking about. If it's industry, what type of technology, intelligent technology you can use, what kind of ways do you need to work, all right, to keep your business, that aspect of the business running, as well as the back office. That's something that's going to have to be looked at. But I think it comes down to the technology solution that you pick based on the business you do and the industry you're at. And please, it doesn't have to be the whole company. Some of these things have to be in phases, and in phases means we're going to prioritize the core areas, because that's the areas that we need to function in order for our businesses to work. So that would be my input on that particular question. But if you want collaborative tools and whatnot, I'll suggest you message, because we obviously may not be able to mention those.
Okay, excellent. Thanks very much. So now I'm over to you, but we're going to do two things. One, you're going to just talk about that question and give us your parting words. Do you think, or do you agree with that statement that every future of work engagement is actually a workforce transformation engagement? All right.
On the education bit, like I indicated earlier, our systems have to be a lot more inclusive and adaptive. Okay, that's basically it. And what I mean by that is that we should keep iterating whatever we are teaching in the, in our universities, and ensure that industry is something that actually connects with what industry needs. But what I realized in our part of the world is that to get this done, the actors all have to be together to be doing this. And currently, we don't have all the actors involved. My advice to individuals always, and when we go to the universities for career fairs, etc., what I say is take ownership of your career. Okay, own it as an individual. And for those of us on this platform who have children, I think we should guide them in that space as well. And the most important bit is, giving them access, okay, and giving them, getting them to explore and experiment the world out there. How many children are actually taking internships in today's Ghana? Okay, these are opportunities that you give to people. How do children in our environment see mentoring, for instance? Is this something that is of value to them, or is this something that they see as you only get into mentoring when you get into the formal workspace? And these are all practical initiatives that I think we can start off with. And for those of us in private sector, I think it's important for us to also support some of these initiatives that get people ready. I'll be honest with you, some of the talent that I have in our space today are people who started off with us as interns, came to do national service with us, and eventually joined us on our graduate development program and currently are with us in the system. Okay, and some of these people have gone all the way to C-suite level within our organization. So this gives you a view of how giving people the opportunity to experience work whilst they are learning actually adds value to what they bring to the table. In terms of final words, with regard to the future of work, I think that the first one I'll say is that the same way we have our KYC for our customers, I think you need to know your employees as well. It's extremely important. And once you're able to derive the right insights that help you make the right people decisions, it's better for your organization, it's better for the people you manage, and you're able to get better results. Flexibility and remote working, I think it's something that we've heard in this session as something that's here to stay as practitioners. How do we equip our businesses to get the most value out of this? Increased automation and virtualization. It doesn't always have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be large scale, like Anita rightly said. You can start small, test it, iterate it, and see if it works for you. Different resource and options is what I picked from Pam's session as well. And I think it's extremely important. Currently, global talent reach is easily accessible than we thought. I can sit in here and I can have somebody from India supporting me remotely on an initiative that I'm deploying, and I don't have to go through an end-to-end strict, contract with that person. I just need to have a contract that works between the two of us, and we are good to go. So it makes competition in our local market even higher, and I think it's important for us, and it also helps our businesses because we have reach. And it also tells us that not everybody has to be your FT sitting in the workspace. You have to look at things a bit more differently. Then the complexity of HR management itself, I think, has shifted a lot. And as practitioners, I think we need to look at our role as very valuable at this time, and how quickly we evolve it for business value add, I think, becomes extremely important.
Thanks. So let me go to Irene.
Okay, thank you very much.
20 seconds. I'm counting for now.
Okay, that's a cue there. So I think the word that I would use is opportunity. This presents us with an opportunity in Ghana and the rest of the continent. The topic is completely multifaceted. There is so many dimensions to it, but I would leave the panel and the people here today with think about skills development. Think about every opportunity. You asked a question. I think every opportunity is an opportunity to stop, reflect, look for change, right? So as we go through this kind of process, we look for change. So look for opportunity, look for the opportunity to develop your skills, look for the opportunity to bring your workforce along with you. I think that's how I would leave the conversation.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Don't worry, I'm going to give you an award for keeping your time. All right. So last but not the least now, Anita. So you're passing. Just hold your thought, Anita. You're passing short, and I want So I've heard a lot around. So I did mention earlier that you cannot separate. What do you call these twins now? Siamese twins, right? What do you call them now? Right. Okay. Good. So you cannot separate, those three dimensions: the workforce, the work, and the workplace. So I've heard a lot around the workforce, right? I've not heard a lot around the workplace and the work. So in your closing remarks, can you just zero in on phase two?
Okay.
Thank
All
you.
right. Now, before I do my close, I just wanted to add a point to Ames on the education. For me, I don't think that industry, meaning businesses, we need to sit down and wait for the education sector in Ghana or in Africa to wake up. I think that there are things that we can do. For example, I'm working with some education institutions, universities, and we're looking at their careers departments. We've managed to engage with employers that want to employ from that university. So that means that they have come up with programs to go into the uni to tell the students what we expect when you work for us, what the job market is like, and kind of prepare them so they come in with some reality, the skills we need you to develop, the kind of skills we need if you want to work for us, and so on. So I think that this sits with the HR. People come, they want internships, and that we need to begin to look at internships as a way of finding talent. And have proper internship programs or policies in our organizations to help us source talent. And we can do this with the education institutions. We can also communicate to them the type of skills we want for the types of courses they're doing for the careers that people want to come in. I'm just quickly on that point. That's a whole debate in itself. I just wanted to add that as an organization, you can engage with an institution and begin to communicate what you need. And there are organizations, as we all know, that pick from some of these universities. So you don't have to sit here and kind of wait. That's the point there. But in closing, you were saying that I should speak to workplace and what was it about the workplace and the work? Yeah. Okay. So for me, in looking at the future of work, at the end of the day, I think you always, for each area in your strategy that you want to look at as you plan for, there are 3 questions I think you have to ask for whichever headline, whether it's technology, whether it's work, or whether it's the workplace, which is, what is the organizational needs? What is the industry doing? What is the market saying? Because we're talking markets about the customer, the consumers, which will have an impact on what the industry, what technology, what service you do, what people you hire. So you do need to look at what is the market saying, what is the industry doing? It's about the innovation in the industry. Is it the technology? Are we developing people differently? What is happening? And then our organizational needs, because every need is going to be different. I think that's the 3 questions you need to be looking at across the key areas of the future of work strategy. And I believe that when it comes to the work, it's really about how are we working and what do we need to do to improve for the future. And when it comes to the workplace, it's what is the culture of the workplace? Because please, there's been a shift. A lot of organizations really saw whether they had productivity ever when COVID, for example, struck and people had to work from home. So you now know that maybe the culture you thought you had and the culture you're having now are 2 different things. There has to be some culture alignment, because that has to speak to the way we work, because now we're going to have people working from home, people coming into work, or in some kind of hybrid scenario. So in a workplace, we need to understand our culture. We need to understand the style that will work with the type of business we are and the industry that we are in. And we also need to look at the intricacies of the resources and systems that we need to make this adapted work environment work. And that is going to be unique to every organization, and every organization is going to be at a different level of this. All right. So this conversation isn't that you need to be panicking and thinking, oh my God, I'm nowhere. We're saying these are some of the things that you need to think about. In answering the last point here on your question on, is every change transformation? No, for me, I don't think every future of work activity is a transformation. There are areas of a business that we just need to have continuous improvement. We just need to look at how do we do things better. And there's going to be the areas like we're talking about, technology, the workplace, some elements of the way we work that are going to be transformational because of the nature of the change that is involved. All right. So I don't believe every future work activity is transformational. You need to do, as I said earlier, an assessment of where you are as an organization, and then from there you develop your future of work strategy.
All right. Thank you very much. It's a. Don't worry, Anita, it's a topic for another day. So I think at this point, I want to yield the floor. I think the one thing that is critical that I heard, I heard in the last few seconds or minutes is the fact that we all need to recognize, and I think we're all doing it somehow, but not maybe we're not doing it well, is that the enterprise of today, it's meant to be a social enterprise. This was a conversation, it discussed that I started about 3 years ago. I want to talk about the rise of social enterprise, and I recall at sometime last 2 years ago, about 180 CEOs of companies across the globe actually adopted that philosophy to say, the enterprise of tomorrow must be a social enterprise. And that speaks to what you said, Anita, and of course, in the sense that we can't leave the government to do a lot of things. We have to play a role as a social enterprise. End of the day. So thank you very much. I think I'm done at this point. It's not my. I'm going to yield the floor to Daniel. Daniel, please, over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Joseph. So you actually overran the runway. So you shot the runway. You've taken a bit more time than we gave you. We actually bring you an invoice. We charge by time. So okay.
Okay.
So thank you, the panelists, for being patient, and I think it's been quite insightful, and I've been making notes. So some of the things that I picked up, KYC, so know your client, flexibility, in remote working, increase automation. That is key. You have to be digital to make progress in where we are going. We have to have different approach to our employees, like depending on what they are supposed to deliver, you have to have different approach. And there's a point that also sat very well with me when you talk about increased competition. So your old skill may not take you very far. If you look at what is going on, unless you adjust yourself and being able to work online, being able to be flexible. Somebody talk about the children being part of what you are doing. You need to be able to manage all of that. Someone also mentioned the opportunity that this brings, the skill development, and we have to be ready for change. And 3 strategies. You need to know what you are about, what the industry is doing, and then your market dynamics. So I think when I look at this and I look at the comments that have come from those participants, it's all been great, good comments, and I can only say thank you to all of you. So I not in any particular order. Thank you, Irene, Amma, Anita, Pam. Thank you very, very much, and Joseph. You shot the time, but yes, that's thank you very, very much for leading us through. This is not the end of the topic. We're going to package this, and I'm sure we'll come back, and we hope that we can look at it from other angle as we progress. So on behalf of the partners and of Deloitte, I want to thank you all for being part of today's program. And to our participants, if it's not for you, there wouldn't be this program. So thank you all, and I like the comments that you have been giving. So Joseph, you will leave the contacts of the panel members so that if anybody wants to contact any of them, they can do so. So let me end by saying COVID is still around. Please still stay safe. Don't take any more than necessary risks that you need to take. We are in survival instinct now, and we want to see everybody across the road when we get there next year. Thank you very much, and thank you. We appreciate your support. Thank you.
We encourage you to follow us on all our social media handles, including our YouTube page. We have a lot of exciting content that we post on there. So kindly follow us on our social media handles. The social media handles all go by the hashtag Deloitte Ghana. So you can follow us on all our social media handles. And also to let you know that insights from this webinar will be used for our upcoming Future of Work Thought Leadership report. Kindly look out for that. It's an exciting piece of report that is produced by Deloitte with a lot of useful information for businesses. So look out for the Future of Work Thought Leadership report that will be released by Deloitte soon.
Sometimes the world of work
Thank you very much.
full of
Bye.
contradictions. Technology or humanity, individuality or belonging, security or reinvention, uncertainty or boldness. But what if those contradictions, those paradoxes, aren't in conflict at all? The fusion of technology and people can be a path forward by connecting individuals with the organization and each other through their purpose at work and beyond, by using reinvention as a way to increase the potential for long-term success, and by transforming uncertainty into an informed perspective that helps them navigate the social enterprise at work. As the future of work unfolds, organizations are creating purposeful work that unites individuals, focusing on individuals' well-being in work rather than at work, investing in capabilities to build the resilience of workers, forming super teams that combine people and AI in powerful ways, moving to a holistic view of the post-generational workforce, and viewing ethical questions through the twin lenses of what we could do and how we should do it. The evolving nature of work raises fundamental questions about humans, about organizations, about jobs, about the role of HR, and about the very nature of people, technology, and business in the coming decade. The social enterprise is at work. Prepare to rise to the challenges ahead.